Welcome to Innovating Clinical Trials, the podcast designed for clinical research professionals eager to deepen their understanding of clinical trials through concise, insightful segments. Join your hosts, Eves and Ted Trafford, as they uncover the core issues in clinical research, reflect on the industry, and challenge conventional wisdom.
Hey, Liam.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Special day today.
It is indeed. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we got our first guest ever. So excited. Can I introduce him?
Please
Okay,
do.
I'm going to pull out my best introducer voice. Our inaugural guest is Joel White, founder of Marketcap Consulting and a veteran in the clinical research industry. He's got over 17 years of experience. Joel specializes in boosting financial performance and strategic execution for businesses. He has enormous experience in the CRO space. Joel, I'm going to say, is our clinical trial finance guru and CRO whisperer.
I love it. So what we're going to talk about in these next sections is going to be really around the Q2 2024 earnings recap. And we're going to dive deep into this one and going to cover a lot of information and a lot of nuances. So we're looking forward to speaking to Joel about it.
Yeah,
now.
Let's get it going. Morning, guys.
Morning.
Morning.
I guess afternoon for you, Liam.
It is afternoon. It's a lovely, fresh day. I'm always mindful that I always talk about the weather, which is such a British thing to do, which I'm going to try and stop now.
Well, hey.
Ted and I are ready to get down to business. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll dig in right away. No, so Joel, great to have you here today. And first thing, kick things off. Love to learn how you got into developing these quarterly reports.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been writing these for a long time. In fact, for about 20 years. But anyone who's read them has only been reading them for at most really 2 or 3 years. You know, I graduated from college in late 2003 or such, started my career in the corporate world in early 2004 for a large retailer based here in Ohio, which is all split up now in all different parts. But, back in 2004, I used to call in. This is 2004, right? So you didn't have a lot of webcasts and things like that. I used to
no kidding.
call in to the quarterly earnings calls from other retailers and, sit there with my legal pad and mark down their same store sales and things like that. And remember my coworkers sitting around me, they'd be interested in hearing what it was after the fact. But I wrote it for my own education to stay on top of the market.
Wow.
And it's just a natural curiosity of mine all the way back to, when I was a kid, markets, stocks, things like that. So, I kept that up over time. I've been in 2 industries, the CRO industry since 2006, and I've followed all of the publicly traded companies on the CRO space since 2006. And a lot of them don't exist or have gone public, private and such, but I've just always written these for myself. And then about 3 years ago, when I went out on my own as a solo consultant, I started writing more on LinkedIn, and I just decided to post my notes one quarter, and it was a big hit, and it made me uncomfortable because I didn't want to be a big hit on LinkedIn. I wanted to use it to reach my buyers and not a larger audience, and so I stopped. I stopped for a couple quarters, putting it publicly, and then a good friend of mine, Michael Keynes, who is CEO of like a mid-sized IRB company. He's who I've known forever. He's like, you got to start putting those out there. I was like, Mike, I'm not going to do it. and I thought actually I should start. And so then I got disciplined about doing it. And then eventually Steve Wimmer from One and Elf, he encouraged me to do like a carousel post type format out on LinkedIn. And yeah, so there it is. It is far and away the most popular post. It's not the post that drives the most business for me, actually, but it's just part of the overall content that I put out there, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, we're thrilled that you put them out because I learn a lot. Liam, I'm sure the same thing with you.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And that's why we're here today.
Awesome. Well, on that note, Joel, can you give us a sort of a macro view of the state of the industry currently?
Yeah. So, macro view, I don't track a lot of total market size numbers and things like that. I tend to follow more baskets of companies, groups of companies, and industries more from an equity size and things like that. But one of the larger market size pieces of data that crossed my desk, so to speak, was Icon had its Investors Day a few months ago, and they provided what I thought was a pretty powerful slide. A lot of the information comes from industry standard research, which also has a presence on LinkedIn and is a good follow. And what was fascinating about that was it showed an R&D market size that is large and growing and continues to grow and is expected to continue to grow in the near future. Now, it's always easy to say that any industry is going to grow in the future, right? Because no one can predict the future. So it's a lot easier to say it's going to grow than it's going to contract. And if you feel like being a contrarian today, it's easy to say, well, it's doomsday and this is the top and it's going to be forever. But what really stood out to me about that chart is it went back to the early 2000s, and the size of that R&D pipeline grew during the financial crisis.
Yep.
It grew even after the booming times of COVID, and still grew in the years after that. It's growing today. It's expected to grow into the future. I'm a big believer in long-term trends, that long-term trends will last a lot longer than any of us will think is rational or that it should run. All long-term trends, come to an end someday. I'm sure 130 years ago, if you did a chart of the horse and buggy industry, right, it would have looked really strong well into the 1950s, but eventually
it's going to have a comeback.
Yeah, it's what the saying, I think, is the trend is your friend until it bends in the end, and eventually it bent, right? But yeah, the trend is strong, and I think that there's a lot of scientific and medical and demographic reasons to expect that trend will continue, and that benefits the companies that I track closely, which are CROs and the broader ecosystem of service providers. So it showed that the total pipeline of R&D is strong and growing. The numbers they had were about 56 billion today, growing to 66 billion within a few years. But that doesn't capture the full opportunity for service providers, because even if the R&D pipeline grows, if the percentage of that pharma's outsource decreases, that's not a good thing. That would be counteracting a growing R&D pipeline. Well, based on different surveys and things like that are done, the percentage of that pipeline that's expected to be outsourced is expected to grow from the low 50s to the high 50%. So you have a growing pipeline that's been growing for decades, which gives credibility to the longer term forecast. And then the percentage of that pipeline that's expected to be outsourced to service providers and technology providers is also expected to grow. So that's whatever the opposite of a double whammy is. That's like a double dose of good news in your favor if you're a service or a technology provider in the industry. So the other piece I'll add to it is when I look at the longer term trends and share prices for especially large pharma and biotech, the charts they're up and to the right, especially on the large pharma. Some of that's a little overweighted towards the Lillies, and some of those that are just absolutely killing it right now. It's like a parabola.
Yeah.
But but it's strong across the board. And I know there's a lot of swings day to day. We're recording this the day after a terrible day in the market yesterday, but equities reflect a huge number of investors' expectations about longer term performance. And if you give any credibility to that, those charts also demonstrate optimism that these companies will continue to grow. And in any industry, if the outlook is rosy for your customers, that's another tailwind in your favor.
Yeah. Are you seeing any, just on that point, Joel, in terms of the services side growing, are there any particular service types or technology types that you've seen to be growing faster than others?
Yeah, the strongest, steadiest, to me, are the CROs and especially the larger groups of research sites. That to me is certainly the strongest, steadiest group. Not necessarily the fastest growing, absolutely blowing your socks off, but you spend too much time on LinkedIn and you start to get the impression that the days of CROs are numbered and that there won't be a place for them anymore. And
hey, they continually evolve.
That's probably first and foremost what CROs are experts at, which is adapting to the needs of their customers. And there's lots of evidence, but some of which I just pointed to, that there's a lot of good trends in their favor. On the technology side, it's such a mixed bag, Liam. You've got a lot of small private players that don't have a lot, that nobody has a lot of visibility into. They talk a big game. Some of them have zero revenue, despite having been in business for several years. There was a kind of like a hawkish, borderline unethical pitch on LinkedIn recently for a company that I just don't even want to give them any attention, where they're kind of developing some crowdfunding, and you look at their financials, they've been in business for over 4 years and they have zero revenue, but they're going to revolutionize the industry. So you get a number of these technology players that at the end of the day are right now built for raising money instead of actually providing value. And the number one way that I always assess whether a company is providing value does it have a lot of customers, and is the number of customers growing each year, and are they getting more and more business from those customers over time?
Are they coming back?
So, yeah. Now you get some large technology players like the Medidatas, the Vivas, some companies like that, which are strong and growing and are serving multiple types of technology needs across the industry. They're doing relatively well. Medidata's kind of flatlined, but there's a lot of good progress there. And then there's some up and coming companies, especially some ones that I've gotten to work with that are the real deal, and genuinely reducing the complexity in running trials. So it's just a matter of time to see whether those companies can actually truly scale up and make a difference, or be the next Science 37, which came out with a bang and then shrunk to almost zero.
Yeah, well, a lot of challenges with these small technology companies is they get into this space, and in speaking with them, you learn that they don't really have a great understanding of clinical trials.
Yeah.
And so it does amaze me, and I know Liam and I have talked about this, the funding that some of these companies are able to secure when, it just doesn't seem like they have a great feel for the clinical trial industry and requirements.
For a lot of them, it's the funding that they were, past tense now, were able to secure during the boom days of free money, during COVID and early post-COVID years. It's not that money's all dried up, but that money is quickly orienting, towards stabler companies with real revenues and, in many cases, actual cash flows. Yeah.
Okay.
So, it's just on the technology side, it's such a mixed bag, and I think it's a multi-year phase where the weak ones, the ones that don't really have a true product, will wash out or get acquired for pennies, like Science 37, which sold for 25 cents a share, and the real solid ones will make their mark.
There's a reason why evolution is such a powerful law in all industries.
Yes. And the previous, not this last quarterly recap, but the one before, one of the slides I think was called Tech Patience. Probably not the best titled slide of of all time, but I wrote it because what Viva's CEO said just really stood out to me. The whole context of the quote was, they talked about how they got their research systems to this point where they have so many partnerships with top 20 pharma and large CROs and things like that, and it's taken over a decade. And so I don't take nearly as many calls with small tech companies as I used to, because so many of those calls went nowhere. But it's a lot of them because it's like, hey Joel, can you get us in with large CROs so that way we can get a bunch of business from them quickly? And it just doesn't work that way. It takes years. It takes years. Amazing. So I said, plan your finances accordingly.
Right.